From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Welcome to the special meeting, Monday, May 13th special meeting, 6 p.m. meeting of the Board of Supervisors, Board to reconvene. The first item is roll call.
Supervisor Gleason. Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
I did hear from Supervisor Gleason about an hour ago. He's on his way in from Ridgecrest. He was delayed just momentarily. Should be here in a few minutes. Before we get started, before we begin, I want to announce that we do have an interpreter tonight that's available for anyone in the audience requiring translation of today's proceedings from English to Spanish. Mr. Fernando Lopez, Fernando, come on down if you would. If you come to the podium so we can determine if your services are required. Please go proceed.
Para las personas que no hablan inglés, solamente español, atrás están los dispositivos para que puedan escuchar la reunión esta noche. Okay?
Thank you. Next is the flag salute. Supervisor Maggard's going to lead us in that.
Please rise with me. Place your hand over your heart. Salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item is public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter that is not on the agenda this evening, but is under the jurisdiction of the board. Is there anyone here that would like to make a public presentation before we actually get into the one item that is on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, I go to item 2, which is board member announcements and reports.
Not here.
Seeing none, I'll go to item 3, which is to conduct a public forum in accordance with Government Code Section 7283.1D and receive a report regarding local law enforcement agencies' interaction and communication with the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement in 2018. I think I want to start with you, Ms. Raison.
Good evening, Chairman Couch, members of the board. This item is being brought before your board this evening so a community forum may occur. Specifically, the California Transparent Review of Unjust Transfers and Hold Act, also known as the Truth Act and contained in the California Government Code, mandates that the governing body of any county in which a local law enforcement agency has provided immigration and customs enforcement, known as ICE, access to an individual during the last year conduct at least one community forum during the following year. Your board is such a governing body. Government Code Section 7283.1 states the purpose of the forum is to provide information to the public about ICE's access to individuals and to receive and consider public comment. Your board's meeting tonight is the place and time selected for the community forum to provide information about the year 2018 to the public and to receive and consider public comment. The required notice of this evening's forum has been provided. Your board will also be conducting a forum tomorrow morning during your regularly scheduled board meeting. Kern County Probation Chief T.R. Miracle is present and has a brief statement. Following Chief Miracle's statement, Kern County Sheriff Chief Deputy Tyson Davis is present and also has a presentation which will provide statistical information about ICE's access to individuals during 2018. There is also a request by Jordan Wells and Amber Tovar to make a presentation following Chief Deputy Davis's presentation. They have previously provided a PowerPoint presentation. At the conclusion of the formal presentations, it would be appropriate to invite public comment. It is therefore recommended that your board conduct the forum, including receiving and considering public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Miracle?
Good evening, Chairman Couch, members of the board. Probation, as you know, my name is T.R. Miracle, Chief Probation Officer. Probation operates juvenile detention facilities in Kern County. And the probation department has reviewed its records and confirmed that it has not provided ICE access to any individual during the last year. Therefore, it has no data to provide for the purposes of this forum. At the previous forum, we did not have any data to report either. However, I didn't come up here and state that, and then there was some questions, so I just wanted to be upfront and clear about that. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Good evening.
I don't think that's on.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman,
There you go.
Supervisors, and thank you for inviting us to speak with you today. My name is Tyson Davis. I'm a Chief Deputy with the Kern County Sheriff's Office, and I will be providing this presentation tonight.
Thank you.
As you are aware, Government Code 7283.1 subsection D calls for a forum to provide information to the public about ICE's access to individuals and to receive and consider public comment, and allows the Sheriff's Office to provide related data to the board. To that end, I would like to take a few moments to provide some data and information regarding ICE access to inmates during 2018. It is important to note that I will only be discussing matters related to Sheriff's Office operations, as the Sheriff does not direct or have authority over the operations of federal, state, or other local law enforcement agencies. Before I get into specifics, I would like to reiterate some points that were mentioned in last year's forum regarding what the Sheriff's Office does and does not do in relation to immigration enforcement. First, the Sheriff's Office does not hold inmates past their date of release or delay their release. The Sheriff's Office does not ask individuals about their immigration status or provide ICE with access to our databases. We are not involved in the enforcement of immigration law, deportations, or immigration sweeps. That said, the Sheriff's Office does cooperate with ICE as allowed by law, including making release notifications to ICE regarding eligible inmates. As part of this process, we notify inmates when ICE has requested notification of their release and notify inmates of their rights regarding release notification and interview requests. I'll be discussing these processes and notifications in a bit more detail later in my presentation. Over the course of the last year, the Sheriff's Office has continued to review and improve our policies and procedures related to the Truth Act and Senate Bill 54. This process of review has included ongoing consultation with County Council and discussions with representatives from the ACLU. Before I discuss some of the processes related to SB 54 and the Truth Act, I'd like to briefly mention the Trust Act. This 2014 legislation prohibited agencies from holding inmates for ICE once their local charges were resolved, unless certain charges applied. At that time, the Sheriff's Office ended the practice of holding inmates for ICE past their release dates, regardless of the charges. This remains the case today. Releases are not delayed for ICE. Now I'd like to move on to talk about some of the processes that relate to the Truth Act and SB 54. First, I'll be talking about release notifications and ICE arrests at the jail, which are primarily a function of SB 54. After that, I'll discuss requests by ICE to interview inmates, which is covered under the Truth Act. In terms of notification requests, the process starts when an ICE officer fills out a request form for a specific inmate. Our staff reviews the inmate's criminal history to determine if he or she meets the criteria laid out by SB 54, which is mostly based on prior convictions. If staff determines the inmate is eligible, the file is flagged for notification upon release. If not, the form is placed in the file with a mark indicating notification is not authorized. The inmates for whom notification is authorized are notified using a form, which we have available in the various languages required by the Truth Act. The form also gives the inmate an opportunity to let us know who they wish us to contact when we notify ICE, which is another requirement of the Truth Act. The inmate gets a copy of the completed form. When an inmate is due to be released and meets the criteria for ICE notification, that notification happens when the release process starts. The time it takes to process a release can vary greatly depending on what is happening in the jail and how many releases need to be processed. However, the release is not delayed. If ICE is present, once the inmate is released, they can make their arrest. If not, the inmate is released normally. In 2018, ICE made notification requests for 597 of the 31,789 individuals booked into the Sheriff's Office jails. This represents fewer than 2% of all bookings. Of those, ICE arrested 374 from the jails. I should note that 16 of those were from requests made in 2017. Also, 16 inmates for whom notification was requested in 2018 were still in custody as of May 1st of this year. This chart provides an illustration of this data, comparing 2017, shown by the blue bars, with 2018 in red. As you can see on the left, the number of notification requests didn't change too much, falling about 4%. However, the number of arrests, shown on the right, fell significantly by about 23%. SB 54 went into effect in 2018, and this decrease was in line with our expectations. This second chart is another way to look at the same data. In 2017, on the left, about 80% of the inmates for whom notification was requested ended up being arrested from the jails. On the right, in 2018, about 60% ended up being arrested. Before we move on to discuss interviews, I'd like to provide you some basic demographic information we put together. As you can see from this slide, the 597 individuals for whom ICE requested notification, the great majority were Hispanic and male. The average age was 36, and the median amount of time spent in our custody was about 5 days. The rules surrounding interview requests by ICE are governed by the Truth Act. When ICE wants to interview an inmate, the inmate is notified by way of a form, again translated into various languages required by the Truth Act. The form gives the inmates 3 choices: to decline to be interviewed, to agree to be interviewed with their attorney present, or to agree to be interviewed without their attorney. The inmate signs and is given a copy. If the inmate refuses to sign, that is taken as a refusal to be interviewed. Our data indicates that ICE requested to interview 81 inmates and ultimately interviewed only 12. Of those for whom interviews were requested, 81% declined the interview altogether, 15% agreed to be interviewed without their attorney, and 4% agreed but wanted their attorney present. Before I close, I'd like to make some clarifications about some items that were mentioned in the last forum. First, the Sheriff's Office is not involved in arrests that ICE makes in the community. Whatever activities ICE may initiate locally are done so without our involvement. Second, ICE does not have access to Sheriff's Office databases, and we do not provide them offices within the jail. Finally, I wanted to point out that the Sheriff's Office is not involved with the operation of the Mesa Verde Detention Facility. That facility's operation is completely separate from the operations of the sheriff's jails at Laredo, downtown, or in the outlying communities, as is the case with numerous detention facilities in Kern County that are unaffiliated with the Sheriff's Office. I would like to close by mentioning that last week, the Sheriff's Office received a letter from the ACLU discussing 5 specific concerns they have regarding our policies and procedures relevant to SB 54 and the Truth Act. We are reviewing their concerns in consultation with County Council and have scheduled a meeting with the ACLU to discuss these 5 points. Of course, if after those discussions, we believe there is a need to make clarifications to our policies, we will do so. As I mentioned earlier, the Sheriff's Office continues to evaluate these procedures to ensure we are in compliance with the relevant statutes. And with that said, I would like to thank the board for inviting us to speak on this matter. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Could you go over it one more time? I'm sorry, just kidding.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. I believe now there's a presentation to be made by the ACLU. I don't know the group that it's under. Ms. Tovar? Sure. And Mr. Wells?
Good evening, members and chairman of the board, the Sheriff's Department.
Our translation equipment is down, so we're waiting for them to.
Okay, I apologize, translation services are down?
I'm sorry, did you say translation services are down?
Yes, they're not working properly, so we'll wait until
Okay.
that is resolved.
Mr. Chairman, we've just been notified that we have a problem with the headsets, the translator module, which requires a charger that we do not have. We can,
You know, we're going to try to deal with this. We'd appreciate a little decorum from the audience. Thank you.
my thought is that we could have those who are using the headsets move over towards Fernando, and he could actually provide translation services to
Like to
them
a
during the.
particular area? of the-
Exactly, that's my suggestion.
For Mr. Lopez, what would be the best location for that, for you?
Probably in the back corner back there.
Okay, so why don't we, I'm going to politely ask, if you're in need of translation services, I'm going to ask that you move to my left, your right, in the back, so, because he's going to talk, I presume, as we're speaking. So the further away he is from us, the less disruptive that will be for everyone else, I think.
Ok, hubo un problema con nuestros dispositivos, todas las personas que están usando estos audífonos, y por favor se pueden sentar aquí a este lado izquierdo, y yo lo voy a interpretar oralmente.
Mr. Lopez, can I ask you a question about what is it that you need?
It's a special charger that hooks up all the battery died.
Where do you get one? Okay, thank you. We're going to try to have one delivered so that if we have that done, we'll go back to the way we were going to do it before. Please do.
Y ya vienen en camino las baterías o las pilas, entonces en cuanto lleguen podemos regresar a lo que estamos haciendo, pero por ahorita nomás si pueden por favor sentarse aquí y ahorita lo voy a traducir.
Ms. Tovar, I apologize for that inconvenience.
We'll wait.
We're going to, well, do you want to wait and proceed under this method? That's okay? Okay.
That should be fine. I guess I'll just add that if this process is an issue for the people that are receiving the translation services, that they can speak up and let us know, and we can wait until a battery becomes available.
If it's too difficult, we'll wait. Yes, they can let us know, and we will wait till the thingamajig gets here. The battery charger?
The battery.
Okay. Thank
That
you.
works too.
Mr. Lopez, could I get you to come and talk to our tech guru? He has a suggestion that if you want to ask the folks there if they'd be willing to try.
Amber.
Just let me let you know what's going on there. His concept, whether he can do it or not, is to set up a television out in the foyer and for overflow seating, and they can also possibly do the interpretation services through that television. He's going to go try to set that up and see if that works as well. We're going to try to pull that off.
Okay.
The big screen TVs out there, everybody can see what is happening in the chambers, but Fernando could speak. Well, they can participate by coming in if they want to. So, do we want to try this and see, or the alternative that we can do is interpret?
That's what I'm.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Okay, that's what, okay, we'll go ahead and start that. I would like for us to go on.
Okay, sure.
So it was a really good idea to have two of these, wasn't it? Okay, per their request, we're just going to do simultaneous interpretation right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're ready.
We're ready to begin?
When you are, Ms. Tovar.
Great. Good evening, members of the board and chairman of the board, the Sheriff's Department, and to the community members that came today to provide a public comment. Thank you for being here. Our partner organizations in the community appreciate your willingness to join us today for the first of 2 sessions of the Truth Act Forum. In my presentation to you this evening, I want to be able to provide you with a little bit of background information about the current state of our immigration laws, how these impact residents of Kern County specifically, and the requirements of the Truth and the California Values Act. Today's forum will especially focus on the California Values Act. I want to begin by giving a very brief introduction to the current immigration laws that have created a broken immigration system in the United States. Immigration laws in the U.S., or immigration law in the U.S. is considered only second to tax law in complexity. It is cumbersome, difficult to navigate. Those that attempt to navigate the process often fall victims of fraud at the hands of local notarios who prey on the immigrant community. In Kern County alone, there are only about a handful of immigration attorneys. As some of you may know, even in deportation proceedings where the stakes are so high, an attorney is not appointed to represent the individual in immigration court. As a result, it is common to see people represent themselves against a possible deportation, some as young as infants or even toddlers. Our immigration system is governed by the Immigration and Nationality Act, and the number of people who can be granted a permanent stay in this country is limited specifically by statute. The most common form of immigration benefit is that of a family-based immigration. Family members are able to submit an application to immigration to prove the family relationship as an immediate relative of a U.S. citizen. An immediate relative refers to spouses, parents, or minor children of U.S. citizens. Or through a very lengthy process that's called the family preference system. Let me give you an example. For people that enter the country without documentation, it means that even though they may qualify for a visa, because they may have a family member that can apply for them, immigration laws currently force these individuals to leave the country first to be eligible for a green card. Once the person leaves, the law says that you are punished for 10 years, and in those 10 years, you must remain outside of the country because you were previously in the U.S. without proper documentation. There are some narrow exceptions, of course, but this is the reality of many people in the U.S. and in our community here. A closer look at the preference system. The family preference system is for individuals that do not fit the criteria of an immediate relative of a U.S. citizen. What you see here is a chart organized by that same family preference. The first family preference, F1, that you see on the chart, is for unmarried adult children of U.S. citizens. And as you can see, if the person is from Mexico, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the Immigration Adjudicating Office, is currently processing applications that were submitted on or before August 8th of 1997. That means that family member has waited almost 22 years for a visa to become available for them. And still, that does not guarantee that the person will be ultimately granted a green card. When people unfamiliar with our broken immigration laws say that people immigrating to this country should get in line, that line does not exist for most people. Because if you do not have a qualifying relative, there is no way to submit an application for a benefit. And for those that do, that line, waiting in line, is often 22 years long. Unfortunately, being in the U.S. today without documentation means that many people are left in a vulnerable place where every day they fear a possible deportation. The majority of people that have been deported in recent times were people who had resided in the country for over a decade. What does this mean? That means that many of them had established roots in this country. They were mothers and fathers, contributing members of society that are suddenly uprooted and often forced to leave a family behind. In the US, it is estimated that more than 8 million citizens live with at least one family member, often a parent, who is undocumented. About 6 million US citizen children live with a parent or family member who is undocumented. The deportation machine that is breaking families in the US and in our country has serious consequences that affect children in our communities. And those effects are felt in other sectors of our society, such as schools, health departments, foster care system, and the list goes on. We must remember the vital role that our immigrant community plays in our country and in our local community. In California alone, immigrant-led households in the state paid $56.5 billion in federal and $26.4 billion in state and local taxes in 2014. In Kern County specifically, foreign-born individuals contribute about 19% of all labor income in the county, about 10% of the county's GDP annually. These numbers cannot be ignored. The contribution of our immigrant community to this country and to this county cannot be ignored, despite attempts to isolate and diminish their value. When people ask me, is ICE and deportation something to worry about in Kern County? I think these numbers speak for themselves. ICE data from October 2017 through May 2018 show that ICE enforcement is not only prevalent, but rampant in our community. In fact, Kern County has achieved national notoriety. There are two sets of data points that you will see. Here, the chart on the right shows that Kern County ranks number 25 in the country in ICE arrest in our community. This is, I believe that the United States has over 3,200 counties. We rank 25 in the country. The chart on the left shows that Kern County ranks number 17 in other types of arrests, including local custody arrests. There are 3 statutes that are at play, and I want to acknowledge the department covered some of these, but I will briefly go into a little bit more detail into each of these. The Trust Act was effective or made effective in 2014 and amended, and it was amended by the California Values Act, also known as SB 54. Essentially, it prohibited law enforcement from detaining individuals in response to ICE hold requests in most circumstances. The Truth Act was effective in 2017. It provided, namely, know your rights information to individuals. It ensured fair notice and increased transparency, or it sought to increase transparency. The California Values Act became effective in 2018. It amended the Trust Act. It limited the role of California law enforcement agencies in immigration enforcement. The Trust Act specifically prohibited local jailers from cooperating with requests from ICE to hold or detain a non-citizen beyond the time that person would otherwise have been released from custody to allow ICE to apprehend the person. This applied to all non-citizens unless the person came within a very narrow exception. If an exception applied, the jailer had discretion to honor or not a request by ICE. I believe in the past, this department has encouraged and sought to honor such requests. It provided no protection against ICE notification requests for release date or transfers. The Truth Act, again effective in 2017, provided, in essence, three protections. Provided know your rights to individuals. That means that prior to an interview with ICE, between ICE and the individual in local or state custody, the local law enforcement agency is required to provide the individual with a written consent form that explains the purpose of the interview, that the interview is voluntary, and that the individual has the right to have an attorney present. It ensures fair notice. What that means is that the law enforcement agency is required who receives an ICE hold or transfer or notification request, the law enforcement agency is required to serve a copy of that request to the individual and inform the individual whether the law enforcement agency intends to comply. Number 3, it sought to increase transparency. It requires the local legislative body to hold a community forum, such as what we're doing today, annually, if the local law enforcement agency allows ICE any access to any individual. Also, all records related to ICE access are publicly available through a Public Records Act request. The California Values Act, again, also known as SB 54, with some exceptions, it limited the role of California law enforcement agencies in federal immigration enforcement. It amended the Trust Act, and it extended protections of the Truth Act to the CDCR, the California Department of Correctional and Rehabilitation. California law enforcement agencies shall not use agency or department monies or personnel to investigate, interrogate, detain, detect, or arrest persons for immigration enforcement purposes. That is something that is guaranteed by statute. What are the key provisions of the California Values Act? So there are 10 key provisions that are delineated by the California Values Act. The first one is that immigration holds absolutely are prohibited without any exception. That means that the law enforcement agency is prohibited from holding an individual beyond the termination of criminal custody to allow ICE to apprehend that person. Second, civil immigration arrest. The law enforcement agency is extremely prohibited from making any arrest on civil immigration warrants. Third, the law enforcement agency is prohibited from performing the functions of an immigration officer, including asking the individual for their immigration status, which is point 4 here. The law enforcement agency is prohibited from inquiring into a person's immigration status. Number 5, the sharing of personal data. Law enforcement agencies are prohibited from sharing personal information about an individual with immigration, except if the information is publicly available. This department makes such information publicly available. That is my understanding. Number 6, the law enforcement agency is prohibited from notifying ICE about a release date, except if the person comes within a Trust Act exception or already publicly available. That means that this department should not be letting ICE or notifying ICE know of anybody who is to be released on a certain date and time. Number 7, transfers to ICE. The law enforcement agency is prohibited from facilitating the transfer of an individual to ICE custody, except if the person comes within a trust exception. And if so, the law enforcement agency is then required to report the transfers and basis to the Attorney General's office. Number 8, the local law enforcement agency is prohibited from arresting people for unlawful reentry unless the reentry is detected during unrelated law enforcement activity and the person was previously convicted of a state or federal offense that meets the immigration definition of an aggravated felony. Aggravated felony is a term of art, and it's something that I would be very impressed if the department was able to figure out what an aggravated felony is. Number 9, the Truth Act provisions have been extended to California prisons. That means that the law enforcement agency must obtain written consent before an ICE interview. In terms of office space, number 10, the law enforcement agency is prohibited from providing ICE exclusive office space in its facilities. I would like to then pass on this portion of the presentation to my colleague Jordan Wells from the ACLU. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Chairman Couch, and thank you to the Board of Supervisors for hearing from the ACLU tonight. Ms. Tovar covered the requirements of state law. I want to discuss a little bit about how the Sheriff's Office is implementing these laws and our dealings with the Sheriff's Office since the last Truth Forum last year. So the difference between last forum, the last time that I stood here, is that now, whereas the last forum was looking back at 2017 where the California Values Act wasn't in effect, now in 2019, looking back at 2018, the California Values Act was in effect and needed to be implemented by the Sheriff's Office. And what I want to say before I get into detailing some of the specific concerns the ACLU has about Sheriff's Office implementation of the law is that we and so many members of the community that are here tonight, while of course we want to insist on careful compliance with state law is just the floor. It's not the ceiling for what the Sheriff's Office can be doing in terms of limiting cooperation with ICE. And we encourage, and I think many of the folks here tonight that will give public comment would encourage the Sheriff's Office to go even further in limiting their role in immigration enforcement. I think one of the things that's striking about the numbers that Chief Tyson Davis presented tonight is that the Sheriff's Office is involved in hundreds of immigration arrests every year. It may be down a little bit from the year before, but if you're talking about a number that's greater than 365, which is what we're talking about today, you're talking about more than one immigration arrest on average per day facilitated by the Sheriff's Office. And so while I'm going to make specific comments about the Sheriff's Office policies, and while those conversations are ongoing, we want to urge the Sheriff, who again we note is absent from this forum and ought to be present here, we want to note our disagreement with the starting point of wanting to cooperate to the maximum extent with ICE.
Mr. Wells, can I speak to that for a second?
Sure.
The sheriff may be in attendance tomorrow. He has I'll just say this because I don't really want to divulge a lot and go into a lot because it's personal. He has an extremely good reason for not being here this evening. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, and without belaboring the point, this is the second of two of these, and I think his intentions, at least previously, have been plain that he wasn't going to attend. But glad to hear that there's an actual reason this time, as opposed to just not wanting to be here to hear from the community.
There's a very good reason.
Okay. And we'll leave it at that. I'm sure others will chime in about that. And I'll leave it to that. So I want to go through just a few points that the ACLU, one of the things that happened after the forum towards the end of last year is that we then got into conversation with the Sheriff's Office and started looking more carefully at the policies. And I think, it is a credit to the Board of Supervisors and Chairman Couch that we started this conversation towards the end of last year and are continuing it now and tonight, and there are 2 forums, and that the community is getting an opportunity to weigh in. It is not something that we take for granted because other jurisdictions have really dragged their heels in holding these forums, so we appreciate that. And I'll use my time as best I can, and then I think we should move on and hear from folks. So first, I'm going to lay out five policy concerns that we have, and we laid these out in a letter to the Sheriff's Office. The first is that the Kern County Sheriff's Office cannot delay a person's release for ICE. As Ms. Tovar just pointed out, and as the California Values Act and the Trust Act before it requires, law enforcement agencies cannot hold people for ICE. And so one of the things that we immediately picked up on in the Sheriff's Office policy is that the Sheriff's Office policy has certain carve-outs for holding people beyond the time they otherwise would be released in order for ICE to take custody, most notably when there is a previous order of deportation. And of course, that's a very common situation for someone to have a prior order of deportation. The California legislature thought about that and specifically provided that even in the presence of a deportation order, Sheriff's Office, local law enforcement agencies are not to hold on to people in order for ICE to make an arrest. So that was one thing we immediately picked up on, flagged the Sheriff's Office, and I don't get too far into that because obviously we're going to have a conversation about this and hope to resolve that issue. The other thing that is not reflected in Sheriff's Office policy, and obviously we're glad to have the Sheriff's Office on the PowerPoint say they will not delay release for purpose of ICE, but we've received reports from the community that people are being held longer than they otherwise would be. In other words, someone who posts bond in the middle of the day and ought to be out within a couple of hours finds themselves hanging around and it's getting towards midnight. And the only explanation that we know of, or at least that person can think of, is that the Sheriff's Office was dragging their heels in order to facilitate an ICE arrest. Now, I only mention it because what we've heard are anecdotal reports, and of course, every single case requires, examination of exactly, okay, what was the delay attributable to, and so forth. But what we'd like for the Sheriff's Office to explore is a default number of hours outside of which there's going to be a presumption that the Sheriff's Office is delaying the release in order to facilitate a transfer to ICE. So that's the issue of holding people for ICE. The bulk of the cooperation with ICE, which Chief Tyson Davis described, was notifying ICE when someone's being released. And the law distinguishes between simply notifying, which is just saying, we're about to release this person, and actually facilitating a transfer. And I think one of the disagreements that the ACLU has with the way the Sheriff's Office is recording these transfers is anytime ICE is actually present inside of the facility, that is a transfer under the California Values Act. And the California Attorney General's Office has clarified this point. Anytime ICE is beyond where the public has access inside of the jail, that is considered a transfer under the law, and the person needs to have a conviction that qualifies them for a transfer. And so there are very specific convictions that a person would have to have in their criminal history in order to be eligible for a transfer. And one of the pieces of feedback the ACLU has provided to the Sheriff's Office is that their list of qualifying convictions for that purpose is overly broad and needs to be narrowed in order to come into compliance with SB 54. The other thing I just want to mention about that, and this ties in, I'll just lump in the fifth point that we had in our letter, which is that the Attorney General's Office requires a report each year of the number of transfers that a local law enforcement agency makes to ICE and the conviction that was the basis for that transfer. And we now have the Sheriff's Office report to the AG, and they're reporting that they made 0 transfers to ICE, which obviously flies in the face of the report that we got of 374 transfers. And it also, by reporting the number 0, fails to supply the public and the AG's office with the assurances for each transfer that there was a qualifying conviction that enabled the sheriff's office to make the transfer in compliance with the Values Act. In other words, if somebody comes in the sheriff's custody, doesn't have a previous conviction or doesn't have a previous conviction that qualifies as a basis for a transfer, then even if ICE is requesting notification of that person's release, the sheriff's office can't be facilitating that arrest. And if they were doing the reporting to the AG's office, we would be able to be assured that in each case there was a qualifying conviction that justified the transfer. And I note that it's especially important in a county like Kern County, where we're talking about hundreds of transfers, and we're talking about anywhere between 2/3 to 3/4 of the requests that ICE makes being honored by the sheriff's office. So we want to see the accounting, and that's what the California Values Act requires. Next concern that we had is with the Truth Act notification form that the sheriff's office uses in order to tell a person that, hey, ICE is requesting to interview you. And the form, by and large, is correct and in compliance with the law, but it's missing a line that makes clear that the interview is voluntary. And I don't want to dwell on the point because obviously, as you saw, most people are declining to be interviewed by ICE, but the law requires that the form make clear that the interview is voluntary, so we ask that the sheriff's office amend the form to comply with that. Also, on the PowerPoint, we had the sheriff's office saying that they will not inquire into immigration status, and one of the things that the policy that we reviewed didn't have was a specific directive to staff: do not inquire into immigration status, do not provide personal information about an individual unless it's information that's available to the public. So we want to see those reflected in sheriff's office policy and also implemented. So I think that is all I wanted to cover. We obviously welcome the Board of Supervisors to ask questions of us, the sheriff's office. The goal of this event tonight and tomorrow is to shine a light on the sheriff's office cooperation with ICE. And so we appreciate the sheriff's office openly saying, we facilitate 374 arrests for ICE in the past year. And now, it's on us, the body politic, to digest that information, ask questions about it, and decide what we as a county want to do about ICE. Thanks.
Hang on one second. Do you have a question, Supervisor Press, for Mr. Wells?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Mr. Wells, it's nice to see you again. Thank you for being in Kern County. Means a lot to a lot of people. My apologies for not being here at 6. I had this event calendared at 6:30, so I'm embarrassed, but that's the truth. And so here we are. I did listen to the beginning of the hearing as I was rushing here, but are you pleased with the procedure as you see today, as folks being informed and aware, and do you feel good about how we are at this moment? Or is there an issue that I should address with County Council? Not being here, I'm at a disadvantage, and fully comprehending that implication.
Well, I think, everyone's entitled to their opinion about this, but I would just say from my own vantage point, the fact that the Board of Supervisors is holding 2 of these forums, that one of them is scheduled at a time when people who work during the day can be present in the evening. The fact that the sheriff's office took to heart the criticism that the PowerPoint last time was too brief, too concise, and just did not get enough of a picture of what was going on. I think those are all improvements over last time. Obviously, the issue with the translation, I mean, that is really too bad, and that's something to be avoided going forward.
Sure.
But overall, we're here to have the conversation. That part is working. What's not working is the sheriff's office is continuing to collaborate with ICE on a daily basis, and so I don't want to harp on the process. The process is working, and we appreciate the Board of Supervisors for holding these forums. But the underlying issue of sheriff's office collaboration with ICE, that's something that we as a community have to continue to address.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say one other thing, which
Sure.
is, I didn't want to, in the main, we're dealing with the sheriff's office, and that's where most of the activity is at with ICE. But we went back after the last forum as well, because we had this question about probation, and ICE's own data reflects at least some collaboration with probation. Now, I don't know if it's because ICE has misrecorded its data, or probation is, for whatever reason, not recorded on its end, but we at least had one example in 2017 of ICE collaboration with probation, and we still have lingering questions over exactly what's going on, both as a formal matter and also informally. So I just want to note that.
I'm sure the Chief Miracle would be happy to speak with you about that.
Okay.
Thank
do
you.
that.
Good.
All right, thanks.
Is that it for the presentation?
Yes.
It was you and Ms. Tovar? Okay. So now we're going to open it up to public comment. Typically, we allow about 2 minutes. How many of you would like to speak tonight? I'm going from, that's at least 20 or so, 25. So 2 minutes ought to work. We're going to allow more time if you need an interpreter. So we're not going to limit you in that case. If you would like to speak, I would just simply request that you come down to the front row. It's pretty full right now. If you're going to speak, or excuse me, if you're not going to speak and you're in the front row, I would ask that maybe we cooperate with each other and make a little room for people to get down so you can get up to the microphone quickly. So please, now's the time for public comment. Please step to the microphone and proceed. And try to observe our 2-minute time period. And if you need an interpreter, I guess you're going to have to bring one with you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
everybody. I don't need an interpreter. Thank you very much, though. So, a couple of things that I want to... I'm sorry? My name is Donald Duck. According to the Ralph M. Brown Act, I'm not required to identify myself or give any kind of identifying information.
That you don't
during
have to.
public comment.
We ask that in case people want to, if they want to make their comments on the record, to be part of the record. But
Okay.
I'm going to assume that you're actually not, your name is not Donald Duck.
It could be.
It could be.
It could be. Okay. So just a couple of things that I want to bring up to not only to your attention, but also to everybody else that's here. The Brown Act it's also California state law, and it states that any limitations that are placed on public comment time should be in the agenda 72 hours ahead of time. And I did not see any time allotment in this agenda for tonight as to how long we're going to be allowed to speak. 2 minutes is pretty good. Thank you. Anybody that does not speak English, according to the Brown Act, says that they're allowed twice as much. So they had better be given 4 minutes if this is going to proceed according to state law. So having said all that, I still am flabbergasted that the sheriff himself is not able to attend. And I know you said that he has an extremely good reason not to be here tonight. Well, my grandma died a month ago. My beloved partner died 3 days ago. My father is now in the hospital the very same day that my partner died. He has congestive heart failure. My mother needs major surgery for cancer. And my little brother has cerebral palsy and needs 24-hour care. I have 5 extremely good reasons not to be here tonight, but I am here. And I'm here not for myself. I'm here for the people of my community. I don't know if any of the officers that are in the sheriff's department understand what community means. Community means that we don't just know each other, we know our families. We know our mothers, our fathers, our children, our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors. We know each other, and we take care of each other. So the 374 people that were detained by ICE after leaving the county jail, I'd like to know if the sheriff representative here tonight knows any of their names, or any of their children's names, or any of their family members' names. Because if they don't, then that's not representative of the community. It's not my job to come to you. It's not our job to come to you here, okay? What I learned in student government at Bakersfield College.
I'm going to ask if you don't mind, if you bring your statement to a close. We have a lot of people that want to speak.
Understood. I'm coming to a close.
Gone over the 2 minutes already.
Okay, I'm coming to a close. It is not the job of the represented to come to the representatives. It is the job of the representatives to go to the represented. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Nadine Escalante. I I would just like to make a few comments. For Mr. Youngblood not be present this evening is extremely disrespectful to the community, as well as to you guys, as well as to these family members. I found it very disrespectful during this meeting for you guys to be unorganized and not have these chargers available and in your drawers. And then to also segregate these individuals in your own meeting. That's what you do in our community. And in regards to the jail situation, when I was in jail in 2015, I was supposed to be released at 9 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't released until 10:10 that night. It was an error by the sheriff's department. That's not an accident. And I was also asked by your officers if I was an illegal alien. No, I was born and raised in this county. And also for probation, my issue with probation is when they're doing home searches, when they're going out to see their probationers, they are not scheduled appointments. So whoever is present in the home is asked to present their ID. So if there is anybody that's illegal in that home and they don't have an ID, oh, how convenient that ICE gets aware of it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Escalante. Yeah, Supervisor Perez?
Appreciate it. And Nadine, you've been here many times. It's always nice to see you. You look nice. I wanted to give you my personal observation of 8 years, nearly 8 years on this board, of my clerk, Kathy Krause, and of the administrative staff at this county. Never once have I ever witnessed even an inkling of discrimination towards people who either cannot communicate fully or speak multiple languages or whatever the issue may be. So I appreciate it, and at this point, it's not appropriate to come down. We just need to move the meeting along. But I just wanted to express to you, because I'm sensitive to that issue, and often I can become quite paranoid myself about the intentions of other people because, I like to support the underdog, just like you do. So I respect and appreciate where you're coming from. I want to express to you that I trust our county clerk 100%. And the staff who are here as being fair people. And in this administration and this process of getting to, what's the next chapter for Kern County and what are very difficult issues, I feel it's really critical that we take note and be sensitive about these things because they're difficult. They're difficult for everybody. And I just want to give you, my observation of a person that I trust entirely and who has been fair, overly fair, to every single person who's ever come down here, wherever part of the county they come from. So I know you care and I know you're authentic. It's really not appropriate to come down here now. I just want to express that to you, Nadine, because I know how authentic your heart is. Okay? Thank you.
The translation equipment's also down.
I heard that, and has there been a fix to that issue? Are we comfortable proceeding with where we are? Kathy, I don't want to create any more problems, but I'm certainly not comfortable with the assertion that somehow our staff did not, somehow that this is intentional. I just don't believe that. I've never seen that before. But these things happen, technical issues occur, and we need to address them because they're very important. So where are we with that issue, and are we comfortable proceeding? Do we have a problem that I can somehow facilitate an answer to?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Perez, I am in texting communication with the employee who is trying to locate the charger at another county office. The intention is to drive it over here immediately as soon as it's located. And we're if you want to take a break, you can, Chairman. It's totally up to you.
Let me ask a question of Mr. Lopez. How is the interpretation services, are you able to do your job, and are they able to hear you adequately? Okay. Is it okay? Okay. If you have a problem, let us know. Sorry. Please proceed.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Araceli Ocampo.
Good afternoon, my name is Araceli Ocampo.
Quiero hacer notar una información que tengo. ¿Cómo es que dicen? Otra vez. Quiero hacer notar una información que tengo.
I want to make sure that
I have, I'm so sorry, I have information to give you.
El 8 de noviembre fueron deportadas una familia completa.
On November 8th, a whole family was deported.
Después del que en 5 de noviembre del 2018,
After November 5th, 2018,
ellos reportaron a las autoridades de aquí de Bakersfield
after they reported to the authorities here in Bakersfield
que habían robado su casa.
that they had been robbed at their home.
Y a los 3 días llegó ICE por ellos a su casa.
Then, after 3 days, ICE showed up at their home.
Mi pregunta es,
My question is,
¿cómo supieron los de ICE que ellos eran indocumentados?
my question is, how did ICE find out that they were undocumented?
Los únicos que tenían la información eran los sheriffs que llegaron a hacer el récord del robo de la casa.
The only ones who knew about their status were the sheriffs who were at their home to record or get the report of the robbery.
Mi otra cuestión es esta.
My other question is this one.
Juanita Vargas
Juanita Vargas
fue deportada
was deported
después de haber caído en un retén
after she was detained
checkpoint.
a checkpoint
en septiembre del año pasado.
on September of 2018.
Ella, su único delito era no traer licencia y haber entrado ilegal a este país.
Her only crime was driving without a license or having not a license and coming into the country unchecked.
Yo sé que es una falta, pero no era catalogada peligrosa.
I know that was her fault, but doesn't mean that she was dangerous.
Dejó 8 niños aquí solos
She left 8 children here alone
porque ella era viuda.
because she was a widow.
¿Cómo supieron los de ICE? O si ese también es un delito grande, es lo que yo quiero preguntar.
Well, my question is, was that a real crime? How did ICE find out about her?
¿Es o no un delito grave como para sacarla y dejar unos niños huérfanos?
Is it a crime that she left, that she was found driving without a license and leaving her children here?
Bueno, parece que no tenemos respuestas.
Well, I guess we don't have any answers.
Mi otra pregunta es,
My other question is,
We do not know the answers to those questions. I think you should tell her that.
no tenemos respuestas a esas preguntas, señora.
pues entonces lo siento mucho. Entonces, ¿cómo vamos a comprobar que de veras el departamento de sheriff
Well, I'm really sorry then, because how are we going to prove that the sheriff's department,
no está cooperando con ICE?
that they're not cooperating with ICE?
Good question.
Este año,
This
en enero
year.
22,
This year, on January 22nd,
sacaron toda una familia, dejando a 12 niños, 3 hijos de cada uno de los hermanos.
they took a whole family. ¿Otra vez?
Sacaron a una familia entera, dejando a 12 niños sin padres.
And the 12 children were left without parents.
4
or fathers.
niños de cada hermano,
4 children of each brother,
tan solo porque a un hermano
only because one brother
lo habían golpeado en la calle para robarlo.
was hit. ¿Por otros?
Lo habían golpeado
He was hit by others
en la calle para robarlo.
on the street to rob him.
Y él reportó a las autoridades.
And then again, he reported to the authorities.
Y a la semana llegaron a su casa y los deportaron.
A week after, they came to their home and they were deported.
Tengo hasta los números de casos de cada uno que he hecho mención.
I have the case numbers of each case that I mentioned.
I would ask that if you could provide those to us, and I would also ask that you bring this statement to a close because we're well over the 4 minutes.
Okay. Sí, ¿puede proveernos esos números, señora?
Sí, pero no los tengo aquí ahorita.
Okay,
Déjeme
I don't
sacarlos
have
de
them.
mi bolsa.
Okay, I don't have them right now. I have them in my purse, but I'll take them out.
Okay, thank you.
Y ya nos pasamos el
Sí, muchas gracias.
Thank
Sí,
you.
thank you. Who'll be next? Oh, yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Francisco, for the record. I won't disclose my last name.
Okay.
I'd like to start off with the quote from Frederick Douglass to kind of contextualize what's going on right now. And because of the translation, I'll take my time. I know 4 minutes. Yeah, whatever. It says, quote, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those who they impress. Is end quote. Our endurance has run out. We'll no longer submit to these injustices. We're mad. And there's a certain sense of callousness coming from the board when she was just sharing how there was people who were deported and left behind children. There's a certain sense of callousness coming from the board. So I'd move on from the second part of my comment. I'll be quoting a lot from David Couch's op-eds, calls them Couch's Corners. Couch's Corner. There's a quote. The county has a role regarding immigration. So earlier, the deputy sheriff was saying how the county has kind of wiped his hands away from any responsibility. So it's a direct quote from Chairman of the Board of Supervisors. So moving on, the bulk of, let me go back to the issue of civility and decorum, because that was mentioned by David Couch in some of his op-eds. He said, quote, "Civil dialogue is critical to understanding each other." And earlier today, he referenced the need from the audience to have some level of decorum. So was civil dialogue and decorum extended to the people who are in Mesa Verde? Was it extended to the people who were deported and left their children behind? Was it extended to the children who have...
Francisco, I appreciate your comments, but I want to get to other people as well, and could I ask you to bring your comments to a close?
My demand is for the Board of Supervisors to actually visit Mesa Verde. I know David Couch visited, but it was more of a parade and less of a visit. So please, we're here to hold y'all accountable because you guys aren't doing your jobs.
Thank you, Francisco. Who'll be next? Thank you.
My name is Kathleen Michelet. And I think it was April 19th that the 9th District Court held that the SB 54 was constitutional and that California, or that Trump would have to call that California would abide by it. What the ACLU said tonight basically was that our sheriff isn't abiding by it. My understanding is that our sheriff works for you. So what happens when an employee doesn't abide by the law?
That's a good.
At what point do we hold your employee accountable?
That's a good question. So let me address that.
I would like to speak some more before you do.
I'm sorry.
Because I've only got 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, I won't count that against you.
Okay. Well, the thing is that you've got an employee that's not abiding by the law, and then you've got this group of people, and I'm going to call them people because my understanding is our Constitution protects immigrants, whether they're legal or illegal, as people, as persons. And they both have constitutional rights. And right now, our sheriff isn't protecting those constitutional rights. So he's ignoring our Constitution, and he's ignoring the Constitution that's protecting SB 54. So we've got a president who's not abiding by the Constitution because he doesn't support SB 54. You've got a president that's a white nationalist. You've got ICE that works for the President of the United States that's a white nationalist. So you've got ICE that's basically a white nationalist program that's not protecting the rights of these immigrants. And you've got a sheriff and a president who also isn't protecting the rights of those immigrants. So I'd like you to think about that when you're working with the sheriff who's not abiding by the Constitution and not abiding by the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Who'll be next? If there are others of you that would like to speak, or that request that you get to them, come to the front row. And those of you in the front row that aren't going to speak, if you could help us make room. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Valerie Garospi, and I am speaking as a resident on my personal time. I am a resident of Delano, and I've been in Delano as a resident since 1996. This year, or this past March, marked the 1 year where Santos Hilario Garcia and Marcelina Garcia Perfecto were killed by ICE agents in Delano, fleeing them. I would like to share some stories of some of the students, some of the high school students that I work with and that I've worked with for the past couple of years. One student told me shortly after the couple was killed that her parents were on their way to work in the fields, like so many of our campesinos in Kern County that provide to the Kern County economy, where we're #1 in crop value. Their parents saw a vehicle that they thought might be ICE shortly after the couple died and turned around and came home. They came home and the kids didn't go to school and they didn't go to work for a couple of days. Last year, I got a frantic phone call from a junior in high school who said that she saw on social media that Delano Police Department supposedly was letting ICE use their vehicles to deport people, to pull people over. This was an unfounded rumor, and the Delano Police Department did a very good job of settling and squashing that rumor to make people feel safe, like our high school students. Another student, after the couple died, after the couple was killed, her family didn't go grocery shopping. They had to depend on someone else to go get the groceries for the week because they were so fearful of being pulled over. Several students have shared that they didn't go to church for a while.
Valerie?
Because, I'm gonna wrap it up.
Thank you.
One particular student, and I'll finish with this. She's an AP student, advanced placement. So many of our Delano students go to Ivy League schools, UCs. And this particular AP student heard noises one night and was so afraid to send a text message to her dad, but she did anyway because she thought her parents were taken in the middle of the night. She didn't sleep for I don't know how long, for a full night's rest because of this real fear, and slept with her phone in her hand. Elementary school age students are afraid that they're not going to see their parents after school when they go home. This isn't okay. Our students are stressed out going to school, and it's not okay.
Valerie?
I'm wrapping up.
Let me stop here. We're trying to observe a 2-minute time frame so we can get as many people in as possible. I don't want to adjourn the meeting with half the people not having a chance to say anything. So please bring your statement to a close, and the rest of us here tonight, we want to hear what you have to say, but 2 minutes ought to be enough time to really tell us what you want to say. Everybody has gone over tonight by a good amount of time. If you have written documentation that you would like to give us, we will read that. So please.
I don't think 2 minutes is enough, but that'll be my last comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Who'll be next?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jose Bello, and I'm speaking just individually. I have a lot to say, but 2 minutes, I'm not going to get to it, so I'd just like to share a little bit about myself. And why I'm here today. 2018, I was detained illegally by immigration on my way to work. Unfortunately, I was with my brother, and because we didn't have the right paperwork to be in this country, he got deported, and I stayed here. He has a 1-year-old baby, and right now my legal fees are up to like $15,000, and I'm trying to go to school, and I want to help my mom, but it's really hard. So I would just like to say more, but I like my poem to speak for me. The poem is called Dear America. Dear America, our administration has failed. They passed laws against our people, took away our rights and our freedom, and still expect to be held childless. Dear America, you and your administration cause fear through separation. Instead of building trust with our people, do y'all prefer this racial attention? Oppressed, I live my life in frustration. Private prisons, political funding, mass incarceration, you make the connection. I speak for the victims that pay for this scam. Vietnamese, Jamaican, African, Cambodian, Mexican, Salvadorian, on and on. Together we stand. We demand our respect. We want our dignity back. Our roots run deep in this country. Now that's a true fact. Dear Americans, you might be asking yourself, what's the whole point of repeating these facts? Well, I'm here to let you know. We want to feel safe whether we're brown, Asian, or black. We don't want your jobs. We don't want your money. We're here to work hard, pay taxes, and study. The fight has begun. We will never be apart, Chiquito, is what I promised my son. Y'all can try to justify your actions, try to make excuses. The bottom line here is that at the end, the people always triumph and the government loses. Dear America, do not consider this a threat. Our intentions are to continue making America great. It's time to begin standing up for what's right. Criminalizing children, separating families, our national security, does this make it all right? No, it doesn't and it won't. The youth have to stand up. We have to unite with our peers. Let's begin educating our children, speak wisdom into their ears. Because at the end of the day, I am you and you are me. Together we are. Sincerely, those seeds you try to bury. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bayo. Who'll be next? Next speaker, please. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Al Castaneda. I'm with ACLU, working with ACLU for over 25 years as a volunteer. I was also the president of the Mexican American Political Association, and I can tell you that MAPA alone has represented the Latino community in the state and basically across the United States now, and we have made tremendous political changes by even suing the state in federal court. I'm talking about the racist law that our fine Governor Peter Wilson, the 187 back in 1994. We sued in federal court. We prevailed in 1997 on constitutional grounds. My other comments are also of a historical nature, and I want to say there's definitely racism and discrimination in this county by the sheriff. The SWAT teams were born right here in not in Bakersfield, in Kern County, by the Kern County Sheriff and LA Sheriff when they were beating down on people who were doing nothing more than trying to unionize themselves in Delano. You can see that even in YouTube under the UFW documentary, The Wrath of Grapes. And you can see the sheriff in action. That's when the SWAT teams were born. They were born right here in Kern County. Now, the SWAT teams they're all across the United States and even internationally. Even the Russians have the Spetsnaz. It's the equivalent of SWAT. So also we must remember that Sheriff Youngblood, also not this one, but his father, was arresting people on nothing more than what they might do. Even Robert Kennedy had to step in and say, have you read the Constitution? That video is also on YouTube. Look it up. That's Robert Kennedy takes Kern County Sheriff.
Thank you, Mr. Castaneda. Who'll be next? Good evening.
Hello. Speaking as a community member, I decline to have my name stated in the record.
No problem.
But I would just like to say that a lot of times I feel like you guys are detached from what's actually happening as a result of your actions. Specifically when we're talking about the people who end up in Mesa Verde. I have been there and I have visited. I go and I see the people because at the end of the day, I want to shut down Mesa Verde and all detention centers for that. We need to abolish the institutions and the programs that you guys have been able to allow and use in order to have these people housed in places like that. And when I mean housed, I mean that in a very, not as in a house sense. I mean that is in a roof, but that's about it. People there are denied their healthcare rights. They're denied their dignity. They're being overdosed with mental medications so that they are docile, so that they are able to be contained in a way. The people there are also being denied their legal representation rights and that being abused because of that. And that's not all. When we're talking about the people who are in there working in these facilities, as in guards, they are able to do whatever they want and retaliate against any person who is detained in these centers as many times as they want without any repercussions. People there have the little stuff that they have been able to buy stolen on a constant basis. They work on for $1 an hour. It is outrageous that we allow stuff like this to happen here. Do you have no shame? And I'm going to cut off my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who'll be next? Next speaker, please. If there are others of you that would like to speak, please come to the microphone, or excuse me, come to the front row and get to the microphone as quickly as you can. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Renfro, and I actually have questions. The first question is, how does ICE know to inquire about individuals and go to the Sheriff's Department? How do they know? Is that something that could be answered?
We may get you an answer, but it may be at a later date.
Okay.
I don't know if we'll get you an answer this evening, is what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay.
Okay.
With the current
Possibly.
budget constraints that I know the Sheriff's Department is dealing with, I'm wondering how they can allocate personnel to deal with ICE when I don't believe that's within the area of their responsibility. And the third question I have has to do with accountability of the Sheriff's Department. I know in the structure of the county that the Board of Supervisors are sort of the governing body, but is that in fact correct in relation to the Sheriff's Department?
I'll give you an answer to that. The Board of Supervisors, this is, I think, the legal interpretation. And I'll ask the attorney to correct me if I'm wrong. We have budgetary supervision over the Sheriff's Department. He's elected, however, so we do not have the ability to tell him really much about the operation of his, if anything, about the operation of his department.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who'll be next?
I am next. I'm Dr. Rosana Esparza. Nice to see you all again this week. I'm here because I'm really disgusted and fed up with my new community. I moved to Kern County in 2014. I came here with a mission and a purpose in mind. I left my home in Pasadena to come to the worst polluted area in the United States. I came here expecting to see a modicum of courtesy and respect for people. What I found is quite the opposite. Not only are we polluting people who are working in the fields, we're polluting children, we're polluting grandparents, we're making people sick. And yet we still have rules and regulations to try and expel people and separate us. That's not what America is about. When I was a child, I was told, go to school, excel, do your best. And I did. And I achieved the highest degree there is possible. And this is why I use my last name and why I introduce myself as a doctor, because I earned that PhD. And I'm standing here for the other people that can't be present because their voices have been silenced, because they've been taken away. They've been moved, and they have no right to speak. I'm so disgusted that here in this meeting, you would think that it's okay to separate people and corral them into one area. Why isn't there a backup? Why isn't there a backup for people to be able to translate? I don't understand.
We sincerely apologize for the communications. No, ma'am, not that, because we're not. Is it working now? Is that the charger is here? Well, I'm sorry, can we take just a moment? I want to get to the bottom of this. Doing this on the fly here. The piece of equipment is here. I believe it can work while it's charging. That was the question we just had. It's working. So you're not corralled. Anyone can sit wherever they like, apparently. That's correct. Now now they don't have to sit in that area is my point. So yes, they can. Thank you for pointing that out. Good evening.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es María Hernández.
Good afternoon, my name is Maria Hernandez.
Buenas tardes, mesa directiva, miembros de la mesa.
Good afternoon, board members,
Señor coach,
Mr. Couch.
espero que tome una decisión correcta y no errónea,
I hope that you take the right decision, not the wrong decision,
porque va a afectar a la comunidad.
because it will impact the community, it will affect the community.
Dicen que los sheriffs no están cooperando con ICE,
I know they say that the sheriff is not cooperating with ICE,
pero sí lo están haciendo
but they are,
porque nuestra comunidad lo está diciendo.
because our community is saying it.
La comunidad son nuestros amigos.
The community is our friends, our friends.
Ellos son los afectados.
They're the ones that are impacted.
Deberían de ser honestos y transparentes.
They should be honest and transparent.
El departamento de policía debería de hacer su trabajo correcto,
The police department should do their work correctly,
ya que en nuestras comunidades está habiendo mucha violencia.
because in our communities there's a lot of violence.
Un ejemplo en la comunidad de Lamont,
An example in Lamont,
yo pienso que usted se está dando cuenta que cada semana hay un suicidio o una desgracia.
I know that you are noticing that every week in Lamont there's a suicide.
Estamos deficientes de policía.
We don't have enough police.
Nuestros policías van a cuidar la parte de que es de Tehachapi.
The police that we have go to Tehachapi, take care of that.
Si ellos no van a estar haciendo su trabajo
If they're not going to be doing their jobs
y están haciendo el trabajo de ICE,
and they're doing the work that I should be doing,
¿a dónde va a mandar nuestras comunidades?
where are our communities going to end up?
Debería de pensarlo bien antes de actuar junto con su mesa directiva.
I think that you should think before you act, along with your board of directors here.
Se ha dicho que estamos deficientes de policías.
I know that we've been told that we don't have enough police
No se dan abasto con tanta violencia.
because there's a lot of violence.
¿Cómo es que los van a usar para hacer el trabajo de ICE?
Then why are you using the police to do the work that ICE should be doing?
Piénselo bien, gracias.
I want you to think about it, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll be next. Ms. Prado?
Buenas tardes. Nomás quería,
Good afternoon.
nomás quería Es una lástima que Leticia Prado.
My name is Leticia Prado.
Es una lástima
I think it's really a shame
que nuestro jefe de sheriff no esté aquí.
that our sheriff is not here.
Y la razón es para decirle que es un mentiroso.
And just because I want to tell him he's a liar,
Pero ojalá ustedes lo puedan decir.
I hope that you are able to tell him.
Porque ellos están diciendo que no están cooperando con ICE.
Because they are saying that they're not cooperating with ICE.
Lo mismo los de Departamento de Corrección.
As well as the probation department.
Dicen que no tienen nada de información.
They're saying that they have no information.
Pero en nuestras comunidades ha habido
But in our communities,
jóvenes
have been youth
que han sido deportados
that have been deported
dentro de sus instituciones.
Within their institutions.
Y sabemos
And we know,
que el departamento de sheriffs
and we know that the sheriff's department
ha parado a nuestra gente
have stopped the police, have stopped our people,
y le ha llamado a ICE.
and they have called ICE.
Y esa gente
And those people,
se ha quedado sin sus padres.
they have been left without their parents.
Los traen a Mesa Verde.
They bring them to a Mesa Verde.
Les ponen unas fianzas de $15,000.
Then, they offer bail amounts of $15,000.
So es simplemente dinero.
So it's all about money.
No es de defender la Constitución.
It's not because they're defending the Constitution.
Ni proteger nuestras comunidades.
Not even protecting our communities. Not about protecting our communities.
Ojalá que ustedes
I hope that
ustedes de verdad protejan nuestras comunidades
I hope that you all protect our communities
de gente mentirosa
from lying people
que se sienta en esas posiciones
that are taking those positions
y son pagadas con nuestro dinero de impuestos.
and that they're paid with their taxes.
So, gracias por su tiempo.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Prado. We'll be next. Step right up, sir. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I'd just like to start by saying this is my first forum, and hearing all these stories of families being torn apart devastates me. And to see the five of you sitting up here, emotionless, seeming like you guys don't give two damns in the world, makes me wonder, do you guys realize that these are human beings with human feelings who love their families, and yet to live in constant fear of being separated from who they love? How is that fair to them to not be able to live in peace? It's just, you guys sit so comfortably, and I don't know how you guys can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. We'll be next. Good evening.
Hola, mi nombre es Lorena.
Hi, my name is Lorena.
Yo no vengo a hablar de números,
I'm not here to talk about numbers.
yo vengo a hablar de familias.
I'm here to talk about families.
Familias separadas.
Families that have been separated.
Yo trabajo con niños
I work with kids,
y yo puedo ver la tristeza y el miedo de los niños por sus papás.
and I can see the fear and the sadness in the eyes of these little kids.
Y me gustaría que hiciéramos algo para que no haya familias separadas ni niños con miedo. Y yo vengo de la ciudad de Taft y yo ahí puedo ver mucho miedo en los niños por sus papás.
And I wish that we could do something so that families and these kids wouldn't have to be so scared of losing their family members, of losing their parents. I come from the city of Taft, where a lot of this is happening, and I see a lot of fear on a daily basis.
Les agradezco la oportunidad que nos dieron de hablar y así poder expresar lo que sentimos. Muchísimas gracias.
I appreciate the time that you guys have given us to talk about this. Thank you.
Me gustaría que se hiciera algo por las familias, que si las personas no tienen delitos, en verdad no siento que deberían de ser problema para el país.
I really hope that we can do something to make the separation of families stop. I really don't think that people who have never committed a crime serve much of a public safety threat to the United States.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sal? Could you give a card to her?
Hello, my name, a number. I'm here because in 1989 I was arrested and I had just turned 18. They released me at 1 in the morning up in Laredo, and there was no bus stops at the time. There was a lot of women being raped in the fields. Thankfully, somebody picked me up. Again, I'd been arrested and they told me that I was going to be released at a certain time, playing with my emotions because they know my record. Ridiculing my charges and adding charges that were not true. And again, putting on internet what times my releases were and what times they were going to release me, and was not true. Here because I am legal in this state, and I'm concerned that if I wasn't, more of the aggression and assault I would have attained. I don't know what to do. I'm here because you guys are supposed to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Who'll be next? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Camila Chavez. I'm the Executive Director of the Dolores Huerta Foundation, and we'd like to thank everyone for being here this evening. We are extremely concerned about the discrepancies reported by the Sheriff's Department in comparison with the statements from the UFW Foundation, the ACLU, and the personal testimonies provided this evening. We need no reminder that Kern County is #1 in the nation for killings in the hands of law enforcement. Folks are extremely scared of law enforcement officers, the sheriffs and Bakersfield Police Department, and these questionable practices only deepen the fears and barriers between these law enforcement agencies and the community. You have the power to reverse this. You were elected to represent all of your constituents. As it is your responsibility to oversee the budget of the Sheriff's Department, please conduct an audit of their finances, their policies, their practices, so that our time and energy that we've spent here this evening will not be spent in vain. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chavez. Who'll be next?
Good evening. My name is Lori Pasante, and I am a constituent of Mr. Couch, as is my husband, and we vote.
How do you spell your last name?
Pasante, P as in Paul, E as in Edward, S-A-N-T-E.
Thank you.
And I'm here tonight to stand in support of everyone who has spoken already and those who cannot be here. You are talking about all of your constituents who are members of our immigrant community, or not, as the case may be, but we are all members of this community. And I include in that our sheriffs. I am the daughter of 2 Los Angeles sheriffs. I've been around those brown uniforms my whole life. And yet I know for a fact from teaching criminal justice here in Kern County that the post-training provided by the Sheriff's Department with regard to racial profiling and implicit bias is merely handing out the packet that's legally required, but it is not gone through in any kind of meaningful way whatsoever, let alone tested or followed up with. I would like this board to check out the training practices of the Sheriff's Department to ensure that it is meeting standards that even the International Association of Chiefs of Police have stated are required for us all to be safe if we're going to engage in proper community police relations practices. If, in fact, that is not systemically possible in the short term, I encourage every single person in this room to check out Harvard's Project Implicit website and the book Blind Spot, which is based on legit information about what implicit bias is as a gateway into having real conversations about how to prevent the type of horrors and fears that you have been demonstrated about by people here tonight and at the previous forum. You can do it by yourself, because I'll tell you right now, my students, they all, if they want to go into law enforcement, they say without fail, it's because they want to help people. And once upon a time, I like to believe in my heart that everyone here who wears a brown uniform, you also wanted to help people. Please, if your department's not going to check out Project Implicit or look into these issues, do it yourself and be on the right side of history.
Thank you, Ms. Basante. Who'll be next? Step to the microphone and proceed.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn. I am a member of the community and a member of United Now for Immigrant Rights at CSUB. I am addressing Couch and addressing what was found in Couch's corner. You stated that you saw nothing that made you fear for the safety and well-being of the human beings that are inside that hellhole. Couch, you only took a tour. You do not experience, have not experienced, and will never, as a white man, you will never experience what those people go through. And we're visiting, community members are visiting the people in Mesa Verde, and so we know the truth. We have relationships with them, and they are fearing for their lives, but they are not losing their spirits. Because they know there are people outside fighting, organizing, and resisting for them. And Mesa Verde will be abolished. Your seat will be abolished. The Sheriff's Department will be abolished. And Leticia Perez, you are not an ally for the community.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Who'll be next? Step to the microphone and proceed, please. Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening. I would not like for you to use my name.
That's fine.
I'm here speaking on behalf of a student. I know we've been hearing about family separations, but I don't think we have touched enough on the student. Me being a senior at my high school and having friends that can relate to many of these subjects regarding immigration and families being separated, I know how constantly people and my friends like me live in fear. We always fear of coming home and not seeing our parents, and I just want you guys to think that when you guys do that, when you guys make decisions on behalf of this, it's not only affecting, families and stuff, but personally affecting your future, the students. And it's not just, sorry, it's my first time speaking, so.
It's okay.
I just want to make it out there, I know many students are not here. I came out of school in my khakis, stole my uniform, and I still came and represent because I know that I have a voice, even if other people can't have a voice. And I would like to thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before you make a statement, I want to say thank you. Is it Jocelyn? Am I saying that right? Yeah. Thank you for visiting those people. That's an important thing that you do. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Julie Solis, and I live here in Bakersfield. And when I was in kindergarten, my dad was deported. My dad came to America in the early 70s in search for opportunity. My dad's from Aguascalientes, Mexico, and there's no opportunity for him there. My grandma, my grandpa were poor. My tios and my tias were poor. And my dad knew that he wanted to have a family. My dad knew that he wanted the dream. So my dad came here. And when I was in kindergarten one night, we had an immigration raid and they took my dad away. A few years later, about 4 years later, after my dad being in hiding, he was granted amnesty in the mid-'80s. And I still remember the day that my dad got amnesty and the excitement, knowing that we didn't have to hide from the green and white vans anymore. I don't think, Gleason, that you've ever hid as a child because they're gonna take your daddy away. Maggard, when was the last time someone pulled you over because of your skin color? Couch, when? Have you ever been pulled over by the sheriff with the gun, steel
No.
to your head, because of the carload of people that you were with was brown? Scrivener, I'll ask you, but the only time you've been arrested was on your drug bust. So we'll skip you. You know what that's like. I have trust issues with all 5 of you. Crooks, liars, all 5 of you. Leticia, I'm mostly disappointed in you. The disappointment. My 3 questions are, how does ICE know who's in custody? How does immigration get that list? Does it pop up on Google? Can I Google who is in custody and compare it? How is that happening?
Ms. Solis,
What protocols are
me
in
ask-
place?
politely
And how
ask
are
you to
the
bring your
policies
statement
being implemented?
to a close.
Those are my questions.
Thank you very
Shame
much.
on all of you, racist, liars, corrupt, all of you.
Who'll be next? Please step to the microphone and proceed. And what we are truly interested in tonight is your experiences and relevant comments with Senate Bill 54.
That was very personal and relevant, I think.
It wasn't that. You can call it that if you'd like, but that's not what it was. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, board, for having this. This is my first time here, actually. My name is Manuel. I work for Bakersfield College. I'm a counselor there. I'm also representing a student organization. A lot of them are here wearing the same black shirts. I just want to give you a different perspective of the undocumented, what we all know as dreamer students, right? They're not criminals. They're not people that are out to take people's jobs and things like that we hear in the media. I could definitely tell you that without question, they're one of the hardest working individuals that I know, right? Not just in their work ethic, because a lot of them do jobs that most Americans don't want. I mean, you could see Jose Bello and he'll be working in the fields when he's not in school, right? And many others. In the classroom, definitely excelling. I'll give you an example. I work for the EOPS program, and we just had our award ceremony in April. We gave out 5 awards for 4.0 students, right?
Nice.
3 of those were undocumented students. 2 of them were actually here, present. I hope they get a chance to speak as well. And I say that because a lot of the perception in the media is often negative. We know these individuals are hardworking and they want to improve their community. On that note, these same students are also going out to the community. They're going out to high schools to talk to graduating seniors. They're going out to Delano this upcoming Friday to talk to them about not giving up, especially for those that are undocumented, because we do know that a lot of undocumented students are giving up before they even start. And that's because of the fear, right? That's because of the stigma. And we're fighting hard to fight against that, and I hope that you participate in that as well, too, in your decision-making. With that said, I think I'm almost done, but I'm glad to be here. It's my first time. I'm a rookie at this. I'm super glad, and I love everybody who's up here speaking positivity, and I would keep it that way personally.
Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you.
Who'll be next?
Buenas tardes, Octavio Barajas for the record, and I'm a colleague of Manuel. We're one of 2 staff members. I'm a faculty of social science who work with our students at Bakersfield College as well. And many of them are doing outstanding things scholastically, also involved in the community, engaging the community, raising awareness. And much of the fear and the transparency that this forum is aimed to achieve are the things that I have just snowballed. It's like a door that has been opened, a Pandora box of experiences that come with building up these relationships with the students that we've had at Bakersfield College. And so these 2 minutes don't suffice, but I see that the clock is ticking already, and I wanted to mention one case in particular that was brought to my attention from one of the students last year who had her father, who who's now in Mexico. She was a student of mine in the fall semester, and she ended up withdrawing from my class for reasons I'm not sure, but before she did, she shared with me the fact that her father was arrested by the sheriff department. Her father was arrested, and I'm not sure about the details, he was in Mesa Verde in July, and he volunteered his deportation because he felt he needed to be in a better place where he can contribute to his family rather than being detained for X amount of months. So this is someone who this is not someone who I had to reach out to. These are the stories that were coming up to us. Many of the stories that you're hearing directly. And the challenge is what are you going to do about it? You need to take a very serious position and reaching for the ceiling, as it was said earlier. The Truth Act is only just the bare minimum. Kern County needs to take a stronger approach in making sure that this issue is serious to each and one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask a short question of the, I get this confused, Chief Deputy, Deputy Chief. I think there are probably multiple answers to this question, but are you able to give a short answer to the question of how does ICE know if someone is in custody in the jail? There could be multiple ways they would know, but I think the implication is that somehow the Sheriff's Department notifies them. But I'm sorry, I'm trying to have a conversation with the Chief Deputy Tyson. Did I get that right, Chief Deputy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Chairman Couch, I've spoken with the local supervisor from ICE. I asked them how they do learn who's in custody. They told me they get their information through federal databases. When persons are arrested, when they're booked into jail, they're fingerprinted. Those fingerprints go into a federal database, and ICE has access to that federal database. We have no control over that.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Supervisor Maggard has a question.
Chief Deputy Davis, could you also tell us a little bit about what's your understanding of the distinction between Mesa Verde and our Kern County jail system, and what inmates go to Mesa Verde versus the jail, and do we use Mesa Verde for any of our inmates that go there, or is that completely independent of the county?
Supervisor Maggard, through the chair. Mesa Verde, to my knowledge, is a private correctional facility that is contracted with ICE. The Kern County Sheriff's Office and the County of Kern have no relationship with Mesa Verde, nor do I believe the County of Kern has any authority over Mesa Verde.
Thank you. That was my understanding. Our County Counsel, Margot Rezan, can you confirm for me whether or not the county has any influence over Mesa Verde, and is there any connection whatsoever to county government?
I'll be happy to double check that, Supervisor Maggard, through the chair. However, it's my understanding that the county does not.
It appears Ms. Lawson, who is here for our CEO this evening, I've been here a long time. I've never seen anything about Mesa Verde included in our budget. Are there any connections you're aware of, even fiscally, to the operation of the county?
Supervisor Maggard, through the chair, not to my knowledge.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who'll be next? Public speakers, still. Sorry to interrupt you with that.
I just want to make a comment on what he said. 3 months ago, I was called by a mother and a wife because her husband was in Laredo jail. He was told that he was going to be released in the Greyhound to go back to where his family was, and he ended up going to Mesa Verde. So when you state that you don't work with ICE, that's a lie, and you're lying to the whole community.
Who'll be next? Next speaker, please. Good evening. Ms. Sidhu, right?
Yes, good evening.
Hi.
My name is Mona Sidhu, and I'm an immigrant. I have a question. I understand that one way ICE might discover that someone's been arrested is because of the fingerprints going into the database, but I'm interested in finding out how they would know when someone is being released. because apparently in order for them to come pick them up, because you can't delay the release, they would have to get there in time. So I would be interested in finding out how ICE discovers the release date of somebody who has been arrested. But the other point I wanted to make is it's clear that there's still a lot of bridge building that needs to be done between the community and the sheriff's department. And partly that might be because 2 years ago, almost exactly, the sheriff came to this body and asked that this county declare itself a non-sanctuary county. And even though he had been advised by county council that that was outside the purview of what this body could do, the county council made his opinion extremely clear to anybody who wished to listen to him, and yet the sheriff came and was given a lot of time to make his presentation as to why we should be a non-sanctuary county. And one of the arguments he made was that, well, if we become a sanctuary county, then federal funds would be cut off. That has yet to happen 2 years after he made that dire prediction. Now we've been a year into being a sanctuary state, and I think you can understand why it might be difficult for people to trust information that the Sheriff's Department gives when the head of the Sheriff's Department has made his opposition to the current law so obvious. So I think efforts need to be made to build those bridges that have been burned and trashed by the sheriff.
Thank you, Ms. Sadu. Who'll be next? Any other public speakers this evening?
I have one more thing to say. Every time I get arrested, I get my license or my ID taken away from the sheriff's department. If I have money on me, they give me a check that I can't go in cash, and I've gone to cash, and the people where I go cash my checks, they tell me that they don't have any funds. So I want to know why I'm classified as a liar to a police officer when a lot of police officers have been lying to me.
Could I ask you to give your name and, well, if you want to, your contact information to the officers there, and they can work with you and try to get you an answer on those things. I'm willing to try to help you do that.
All right, guys. My name's Esther Rodriguez.
Well, I didn't ask you to tell us. I asked you to tell.
I'm telling
go over
them,
there,
I'm
go over there
telling you, I'm telling them.
Okay. Could you provide your, not at the microphone. I don't want you to give them your cell phone number or email address or any of that. I'm asking you to just walk.
I get it. Esther
Okay.
Rodriguez.
Maybe you could give it a shot, guys, if you want, if you think it's,
Chairman Couch, I
Yeah.
have staff in the front row here. She wants to provide her contact information. We can follow up with her.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other, I thought I saw somebody, ma'am, were you coming down to speak? In the front row? Please. Who else would like to speak? Okay, you're in the front row. Good for you.
Hello, my name is Sharon Wioka, and this is also my first time doing this. Do any of you know what this is?
Yes, I think I do.
Okay, you want to tell me what it is? Can you explain to me?
Is that the card that is given to people to tell them what they're supposed to say if they're detained? That's what it looked like to me. I can't read it from here though.
It is. And I carry this myself because it's come to the point now that we don't know who we can trust. We don't know who we cannot trust. But at this point in time, it's every one of you. It's a lot of people in the police department, in the sheriff's department. Can you not look at yourselves in the mirror and think, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What have these people done to me? Why do I need to take that child away from that person? I would like for you, all of you to experience what they are going through. If you have children, young children, grandchildren, why don't you put them into a detention? Then let you feel what it's like for those that are having to do that. But then again, oh wait, yours will only be there overnight. Theirs are there until they say they can go. But I want to tell you right now, you guys need to wake up. You need to smell the roses, because all you're doing to Bakersfield to Kern County is you're just putting it in the mud. You're the ones that are giving Bakersfield a bad name. We have crooked cops, everything. And Bakersfield is number one on the list of more cop killings. We are number one. Cops that are killing people, number one.
Thank you very much for your, who'll be next? Yes, sir, in the front row. Or, I'm sorry. There's no prize for going last, so.
My name's Linda. This is my first time at a microphone, so I'll see if I can get through this, okay? There's a few situations that I feel have not been addressed. I've been a former business owner, durable medical equipment, and we served hundreds of disabled veterans. There's things that I have become privy to, and I'd like to bring them up. First of all, I believe most people here are not aware that tens of thousands of our police have gone to Tel Aviv, Israel, for police training since 2002. As a result of that, what has occurred is that they have basically and essentially, first of all, militarized our policing. Second of all, enhanced racial profiling, and to train to view people of color as an enemy. There's finally a police chief in North Carolina who more recently has actually demanded to have their police training stopped over in Tel Aviv because of this very issue. And as a result, she's being called an anti-Semite, and they're trying to shut her down from preventing this treatment. I wondered if Kern County has participated in this program, and I would also wonder, just as a citizen of the United States, why in the world would we send our police to another country to learn these practices as a result of a country who has some of the highest human rights violations, and these are who we're participating with? Does anybody have an answer for that?
I'm going to try.
If our police
I'm going to try to give you one. We are, since we're in the financial, what do we call it, duress, crisis, we have always asked that our departments put on our agendas any sort of what would be called extraordinary travel, and I think that would clearly qualify as that. We've never had anything like that on our agendas, nor do I believe anybody from the County of Kern has ever gone to Tel Aviv on business of any kind.
I do know nationwide there's a direct result of the militarization, the brutalization they've learned, escalating along with the training that they've had since 2002.
Understood.
And one more point I'd like to make is I think very, very seldom people ever consider what has driven them out of their countries, away from their homes, away from the places that they love. The, you might say, economic manipulations and articulations that have occurred to cause people to even leave their home and end up in another country.
Linda, could I
Is
ask?
there any way we could help work with those countries to see if we can hold some accountability? Because at the end point, you're the ones held responsible.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, thank you.
Who'll be next? Sir, you've been sitting in the front row. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Nancy, and I'm here with the California Immigrant Youth Justice Alliance. We're a statewide organization of young folks organizing against this police state that affects our immigrant communities. And I just want to start by reminding everyone here today, especially this governing body, that you are not doing the community a favor by being here and listening to us. This is what's required by law. You know, you all are acting as if this is, like, you all are providing some sort of service. This is your legal requirement. So I just want to remind folks that, right, we don't need to thank them or ask them for special favors when this is literally the law. This is literally what you all have to oblige to. We've been working with young people across the state, especially here in California, to set the tone of what immigrant liberation and immigrant rights looks like. You all can paint whatever tone you want, but the reality is that the United States is the #1 worldwide in incarcerated people, and Kern County is the #1 county in police killings. So what we, you could say that this isn't happening. What is felt on the streets is felt on the streets and is communicated. I also want to remind folks that, the last truth forum that we had, and the truth forums we've seen across the state, the Board of Supervisors tries to wash their hands from any involvement with the Sheriff's Department, which is a rogue agency, and ICE, which is a rogue agency, and these private detention centers that have countless human rights abuses. You can say whatever you want that the city is not tied to Mesa Verde, but Mesa Verde is in your backyard. And if you choose to turn a blind eye to deaths, right, to severe human rights abuses that have been recorded through the Attorney General's office and the report that he released of all the detention centers in the United States, that's on you, right? That means that you have blood on your hands and you have responsibility of your hands to act. In last year's forums, you also said that you have no control over Sheriff Youngblood, yet today Chairman offered an official statement of why Youngblood isn't here. Unless you're his new spokesperson, if the excuse was so important, he should have issued a statement, and he should issue a statement of why he was not here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. He'll be next. Yes, sir. You've been waiting for a long time to speak in the front row in the green shirt.
My name is Gonzalo Santos. I teach at Cal State. I come here every time there's a vacuous report from the sheriff as to the ways they backhandedly collaborate with ICE to denounce it. I think the board has jurisdiction over Mesa Verde. First of all, you have to understand what you're dealing with. It's an extra-constitutional gulag. This is not a constitutional jail. This is supposedly an administrative center to process people when they have irregular immigrant status and for fear of flight must be temporarily detained. But in reality, it's a jail with extra constitutional powers of unaccountability and violation of human rights on a systemic scale, which I describe as America's gulag. We have hundreds of such centers. They are for profit, and they are torturing people and violating their human rights on a daily basis for profit. Okay. I understand the sheriff is not in any relationship with Mesa Verde, and you're not in any relationship with Mesa Verde, and nobody is in any relationship with Mesa Verde, okay? This is unaccountable institution of violation of human rights on an epic scale, nationwide, and we have one such gulag entity here in your county. Now, you're very, very good at imagining solutions to cumbersome problems. Use your imagination, board. You have the power to shut down their water or their electricity or their whatever, their parking, their air quality, their medical regulations, whatever you need to hang on to. You have the power to have audition, to have hearings, to have inspections, to have them come here to report on a weekly basis everything you demand to know, because you have this place in your county. Now, I sympathize with you because you're dealing with the federal government running amok. And this has been going on for several administrations. This is not just Trump. Trump is just turbocharging it. But this has been going on for a while. This thing has been set up since the 1990s. It's out of control. The counties are taking charge. All over the country, they're beginning to do imaginative things to rein this in,
Dr.
to rein
Santos,
in ICE.
Could I ask you to, It's an excellent statement. I almost don't want
Yeah.
to stop you, but I need to ask you to bring your statement to a close.
I will, by
you.
saying,
Thank
use your powers as the governing board, the highest governing board of this county, to hold them accountable, to have them report to you on every conceivable aspect. If they violate a county rule, shut them down on that rule.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I'll be quick. Chuck Shaver, retired pastor, First Baptist Church of Bakersfield. And a question that I have in lieu of all that's been said tonight, when we see our sheriff on television at the border with President Trump and in different places rallying support for an immigration policy that many of us feel is contrary to what this nation stands for. Does the county pay for those trips? Thank you.
Thank you. Please go right ahead and proceed. State your name and proceed, if you'd like to state your name.
Sorry, I just have one question. It's for the police. So you're saying that ICE is informed of individuals by their fingerprints, correct? Through a federal database. So my question is, how are the people who are reporting crimes or have crimes that have happened to them, how is ICE being informed of their status? Are they being fingerprinted as well?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite grasp that. Say that again.
Earlier, a woman came up and stated that an entire family was deported after reporting a crime to the police department. So my question is, were they fingerprinted as well, and were all of their fingerprints sent to federal databases so that ICE could be informed?
Chief Deputy, do you guys fingerprint people that report crimes?
Chairman Couch, no, we do not.
So then how is ICE being informed then?
We don't know.
No answer? Okay, thank you, that's all.
I don't know. I don't think the board knows.
Hello, I'm here again. I'm a complainer.
You know what?
My question is to them. Every time I get arrested, I get fingerprinted, and I ask why. My fingerprints never erase. Even if I burn them and bite them off, they're always going to be the same. And the officer told me it's above my pay grade. Okay, I understand that. Maybe somebody else is going to pretend it's me. I pity the fool. But again, how many times do I have to get x-rayed when I go in there? How many times do I have to be ridiculed because of my conditions?
Ma'am,
How do they pass the psych test?
I don't like doing this, but you've been up 3 times now, and I'm trying to let everybody have a chance to speak.
John Blood's not here?
I didn't even hear that.
Excuse me, I want to clarify, since the sheriff is not answering the question, that information is given through CLETS, the California Law Enforcement Telecommunications System. Look it up, CLETS.
I'll look that up. Is there any other? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Ana Karen. I also organize with the California Immigrant Youth Justice Alliance, CJA. We organize with undocumented and immigrant youth across the state. And just being here and hearing all the public comment, it has become really clear that everyone that lives in this county is living under terrorism, and that, we have Mesa Verde, right, in the backyard of Kern County, right? We have the sheriff's department that's collaborating with ICE to put more people in Mesa Verde Detention Center, which we have already heard doesn't have it's a cage, right? It's an immigrant prison. Let's just call it what it is. And the other thing that it's becoming clear is that the board is not taking any responsibility to stop the terrorization in this county, right? So what's becoming really clear is that we don't need Mesa Verde, we don't need the sheriff's department in this county, and we also don't really see a role that the Board of Supervisors is playing to protect the community in this county. And just so keep that in mind, right? Because this is a second truth forum, and it's just not gonna slide. It's not gonna continue to slide for y'all to not have have answers, for y'all to not have solutions, especially, right? When the community is clearly saying that this is a concern, that this is despicable, that this is disgusting, and that we cannot continue, and for the community members, right, also, like, we cannot continue to, pretend business as usual, right? We have to, ourselves come up with the solutions if the sheriffs, the board of supervisors are not taking accountability for the terrorizing things that are happening in this community.
Thank you for your comments. Who'll be next? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brisa. Earlier, Supervisor Couch, you said that you all, the Board of Supervisors, have the authority to provide the Sheriff's Department with the budget or approve the budget. On the budget of 2018, 2019, it's over 227 million that goes to the Sheriff's Department in just 1 year. To further the criminalization of all of us that are here in this room. So if you say you have the authority to provide that budget or approve that budget, then you absolutely have the authority to require him to be here answering all the questions that the community is asking. That's the reason why these forums are required by law, for the dialogue to happen, and someone already said it earlier. But then again, this is the second Truth Forum, and we have no answers, you all. Again. So we know also that the entanglement between the sheriff and federal immigration enforcement, it's really clear. And he's expending county resources. He was just at the border, as someone mentioned also earlier, with Trump and other sheriffs from the Central Valley. So I repeat again, if you have the authority to approve that budget and for him to be allowed to have this amount of money, massive amount of money, then my question to you all is this a proper way to be spending county resources? And if not, what are you doing about it, or what are you gonna do about it?
Thank you very much. Who'll be next? Ms. Escalante, you've already been at the microphone. I want to make sure we allow everyone a chance. Hang on one second. I'm sorry?
I get 2 minutes. That girl had 3 chances.
Hang on one second. Well, that's my fault. Is there anyone else that is here that would like to speak? I want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak before we do any second rounds, and we might not do any second rounds.
Just 2 minutes. That's it. Very respectful.
I'm telling you what, you've already taken more than 2 minutes.
No, I was short.
You better get to your point. Go right ahead.
I just wanted to say, all of you board members on here, I'm sure your parents were immigrants to this country. I know for myself, I wasn't. I'm Native American. Mr. Gleason, I remember at a board meeting you saying that you adopted a Native American child. Please consider that child's ancestors when you're sitting up here listening to all these people speak. I'm adopted, like I've shared with you several times. My grandmother came to this country illegally from Ireland across Ellis Island. This is why it's such a touchy topic to me, because it's a part of my ancestors, it's a part of my blood. And this is when it's tearing families apart. You guys have families. Go home and look at your grandchildren and imagine what it would be like for them to wake up without their mother or their father. It's terrifying. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you,
Escalante.
Ms. President.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to bring this to a close, and I just want to say thank you for all of you for coming. You might not think we believe that, but I'll make one comment. We're not here because we think we're doing something special for the community. But I would say that we are doing something that not a lot of other counties, no other counties that I know are doing, and that's we're having a forum at night for people to come that could not be here during the day because they work, and we're having a forum tomorrow morning at our normal meeting time. So we're going above, in that case, in the spirit of one of the things that was requested tonight, we are going above and beyond the law. Thank you very much for coming this evening. Do I need a motion to adjourn the meeting, or can I just adjourn it?
Although the counties have the sheriff there.
So moved. Without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.